Hello, I'm Jon Sermon. I'm a church leader based in Suffolk in the United Kingdom. And during this coronavirus lockdown situation that we're still in, we may be finding that we're emerging slowly, and we have in the UK steps that are being taken to ease the lockdown a little further in a week or so's time. Nevertheless, things are still very restricted, and there's a lot of pressure on people through bereavement, through illness themselves, through concern for family members, through being unable to attend funerals, all sorts of reasons, including for some loss of employment or going on the furlough scheme and reduction in income and so on. And so I'm continuing these messages of encouragement during the ongoing situation. Today's Sunday, and this morning we had our virtual church on Zoom, as we normally do, with an interesting experience for me. It's quite some time now since we started doing it this way back in March, and alongside all of the difficulties the situation presents, I'm encouraged by, for example, the fact that my two congregations, 20 miles apart, come together on Zoom every Sunday. And this means, of course, that whilst typically I'd be with one or the other, and other preachers would be handling the one I'm not with, I've actually been with both. We also had wonderful examples of visitors locally across the country and across the world, including this morning a young lady up at 5 a.m. to be able to join our 11 a.m. service from Canada. Obviously that's because of the time difference. Also this morning was a different way of doing things in two ways. Having learnt to control the Zoom facility myself, I've finally managed to delegate doing some of that to a couple of other people who've each taken at least one turn now. So they're getting used to the idea of handling it. Very, very, very helpful, particularly as I'm hoping to take a brief holiday in the near future, and I don't want things to stop while I'm away. But alongside that, the second difference was we've had several occasions already when someone else has taken the preaching slot. Today I had one of my colleagues take both the preaching and the overall leading of the worship service, and only controlling some aspects of bringing up songs and songwords was my responsibility. And so there I was, receiving from another in a particular way that normally I'm the one that has to be the giver. Interestingly, the subject matter included one of those Bible stories that nearly everyone is aware of, at least to some extent. A character called David and a character called Goliath. Now I'm guessing you remember that David was a young shepherd boy at the time, that he was from a family in Israel, and the Israelites were being threatened by their long-term, ongoing, habitual enemies, the Philistines. And so the Philistines were invading and engaging the Israelite army, and yet they were doing so by offering single combat their champion against someone on the Israelite side. Trouble was, their champion was an enormous giant with incredible strength and equipment called Goliath. And nobody in the Israelites' army was prepared to take him on one-to-one until young David came along. Now, amongst the things our preacher brought out was his equipping. You probably remember the story that Goliath was well armed, had a shield bearer, and struck terror into all the soldiers of the Israelite army and the king. And yet David looked at it differently. His equipping, humanly speaking, was his experience as a shepherd, using a slingshot as a weapon against wild animals, and it was with the sling that he defeated Goliath. But what's also worth bringing out is that physically there was no contest. Goliath was bound to be the winner. Spiritually was a different matter. And David actually challenged Goliath with his words, saying, "You come against me with sword and spear and javelin, but I come against you in the name of the Lord of hosts." Knowing that God was with him. He was actually on a godly mission, because the Philistines represented opposing all God's purposes. And knowing that he was on a godly mission, knowing that he didn't have to rely on his own strength and skill, but that he believed God would carry the day. In the same way, I feel we are all on a mission to defeat this deadly virus. And all our scientists and medical people and our governments are helping with the various ways of research and good practice and advice. Yet we also need to be in the prayer warrior mode. I have the sign here, "We're praying," and the picture of the praying hands emoji. And just like David knew that he had to confront what was wrong in the power that God enabled him, so are we, the church and the people, prayerfully relying on the spiritual strength that God gives, confronting a difficult situation in the confidence that God will lead us through. It won't always be like this. Things will improve. God is with us. Bless you all.